Hello, welcome back to I Got Board Game
Got board game. It's Friday.
Friday with I Got Board Game. I am Ben,
I'm John.
and today we're here to review a small cooperative game for you called
Grammar class.
Grammar Class Simile.
Smile.
Put a
Smile.
simile on that face.
But actually, it is a game called
Called
Similo.
Similo. Ooh, that's a cool picture from like a convention.
It's like a board game store or convention or something.
So Similo is what we're reviewing today. It's a small box game. This one is specifically the one I have, Similo Fables, but there's also Similo Myths, like in John's picture. And then also in John's picture in the back, the yellow one is Similo History. And then that red one is one that's coming out soon. I don't think it's out yet, called Similo Animals. And so Similo itself, as I mentioned, is a small co-op game, co-op card game, because inside you basically just have this tray with all these cards, and this is the whole game. Even the rules are on the cards in front of the stack, and then you have all this really cool artwork. Oh gosh, I love this artwork by, I believe it's Nayade, who is a artist in the board game industry, done games years ago mainly, I think, like Tokaido, I believe, is a big one. Lords of Zidit, Seasons. Yeah, I believe it's Nayade. I hope I'm not crediting the wrong person. But yes, Nayade. Credits on a card also. But yeah, the art is gorgeous. And so before we talk more about the game, let's go over and show you how it's played. So let me share the game, a picture of the game set up. So this is how the game looks set up. And the way the game plays as a cooperative game is you have one person who's going to be the clue giver, and everyone else on the team is basically going to be talking amongst themselves to try to reach the end goal of finding the secret character among the cards that are set up in the beginning. And so more specifically, the game is going to be set up by having you take the whole deck of cards, which are, in this case for Similo Fables, is a deck of all these fable characters like Little Red Riding Hood, Peter Pan, Aladdin, I mean, a lot of Disney characters, but then, you know, Wicked Witch of the West. And you're going to shuffle those deck of cards together. And then the clue giver basically is going to deal out 12 cards face up in a grid like this. But before doing that, he'll actually look at basically the top card that he draws and see that card themselves, right? The clue giver will see that one card and then take the next 11 cards from the deck, shuffle it with that one, so there's 12 cards, then lay them out. And so the card that the clue giver looked at is the secret character that he or she is going to try to help the rest of his or her team find, right? That's the whole goal of the game, that the clue giver needs to help his team find the secret character among the 12 cards. And so after that, the clue giver is going to draw 5 cards from the top of the remaining deck. And those are the cards that the clue giver is going to use to give clues to his or her teammates. Because the clue giver can't actually speak or say anything to his or her teammates as clues. The clues are done through the remaining cards that the clue giver has in their hand. And so the game is going to last 5 rounds. And on each round, the clue giver is going to play one card from his or her hand face up next to the grid of 12 that are in the center of the table. And so the point, though, is the clue giver is going to play one other card, one other character, either straight or vertically or horizontally. And so if they're playing the character vertically, like in this case, I just randomly drew what is Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. What the clue giver is telling their team is that the secret character is similar to this character I just played. It's similar to Jack in some way. And so that could be for any reason, right? Any reason that the clue giver is thinking. It could be, oh, maybe the secret character is Peter Pan. So it's like, oh, I'm playing this Jack vertically because Peter Pan is a boy, just like Jack is a boy, right? But it could be anything. It'd be like hair color or eye color or the way the person is looking or the color of their background or what story they're in together. Like anything that the clue giver is thinking. But of course, the clue giver probably wants to play a character or hint at a clue that is something that their teammate would think of. And so they would play one character either vertically, meaning similar or similo, or horizontal, meaning unsimilar or dissimilo or unsimilo, however you want to say it.
Non-similo.
Unsimilo, meaning, like I could have played, like if I had Little Red Riding Hood, I wouldn't because all the characters are different, are unique cards. But, if I play like, wow, everyone that I'm drawing is already shown. But, if I drew like Dorothy, and I put it this way, it's because
Dorothy's in the top left.
Because Peter Pan is not, is a boy and Dorothy is a girl. So not a girl. But again, I can't say my reasoning behind it. It's just showing my team whether the character is similar or dissimilar to the one I'm playing. And so after the clue giver plays one card that way, then the team on the first round has to choose one of the 12 characters to eliminate. Basically, one that they don't think is the secret character. They want to take it out of the grid. So say they choose this Wicked Stepmother. So then that card is removed from the game. And then the clue giver would draw a card from the deck. So they always have 5 cards. And then the second round, they would play another clue. And all these clues will be building up. It's not just like one-time clue. They'll play one card on the side, then the second round play another card next to it, meaning the second clue. It could be continuing the same line of thought. Could be different if they wanted it to be, but they can't say. And so once the clue giver plays the second clue, their teammates have to choose 2 from the remaining 11 characters to get rid of. And again, they want to eliminate ones that aren't the secret character because they want the secret character to be the last one standing. And so the third round would be another clue and eliminate 3 characters. And then the fourth round would be another clue, eliminate 4 characters. And then lastly, the fifth round of the game, it'll be down to 2 cards that are still showing. And the teammates have to eliminate the one that is not the secret character, leaving the secret character. And so during the game, if ever the secret character is the one eliminated in a round, then the game is instantly over and you've all lost. So you want to get to the last round, 5th round, and have the secret character be the last one standing. That's basically the whole game. That's how Similo plays. Each set of Similo plays this way. So the rules are all the same. It's just the art and the characters are different. But then there's also a way to combine 2 sets, which are also included in the rules in the game. And it's very simple. It's basically using one deck to set up the same way, this grid of 12, one of them that the clue giver knows is the secret character. But then the second deck is what is shuffled and used as the deck of clue cards for the clue giver. So for example, this could be set up with these 12 characters from Similo Fables, and one of these characters is the secret character. But then they would shuffle, say, the Similo Myths deck, which is all the Greek gods and characters from that mythology. And the clue giver would be using those cards to play as clues. Show each round playing one Similo or unsimilo. And so that's just a different way to mix it up if you have multiple sets or want a different kind of challenge, different ways of comparing or thinking of characters from different genres together. And so that is how the game plays.
Nice.
Okay, so Similo, small co-op card game. What do you think of it, John?
Yeah, so kind of first off, as we were just mentioning here, cooperative kind of game. This is very much in the same vein as games like kind of like those family style games or party style games. Thinking of games like Code Names, Apples to Apples, stuff like that, of this kind of it's a light game. It's not meant to be super intensive or super exhausting and complex. It's a very simple game to play, very simple to pick up. Anyone can pretty much join in on this style of game. So kind of setting that stage as we've talked about with the rules. One thing I don't think Ben mentioned is that we actually played this game last week over Zoom. So a positive quirk of this, or positive of this game is, if you're interested in picking it up, is the fact that it is something that you can actually play during this pandemic when you are all separated and doing video calls with people. Like, you can actually play this game if somebody has a set. Obviously, the only thing about that is only the person who owns the deck or has the deck would be the one to be able to give clues, because they have to set up the board and then they'd have to point their camera at it. But you can still play the game, provided that the camera is facing the cards tableau of the 12 cards that are outlined, and then can show the clues as they're being played for the players to see. So it actually is doable. We tested it. We did it with a few different people on a video call, and we actually played through it a few rounds. So that is definitely a positive pro of this game, is that it's simple enough that you can do that. Obviously, you do miss out on, I think in the game, you would probably, if everyone were in person and we're allowed to do that on a regular basis, you would probably pass on who is the clue giver different rounds. But at least during this time, this is an opportunity to play this game on with an actual physical copy, right?
And actually on that point, that actually is kind of a bigger plus for me, since that was the game I specifically had like contacted you and other friends to try out to see if it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just from my view of like, whenever I got into board games years ago, it was that kind of analog feel of it. That's part of my enjoyment of it, where obviously there's so many games being put onto like Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, which can work well, but it's also kind of, I think it kind of can get people inclined to just think like, oh, then we still should just play digital things anyway, where it's like, I wouldn't want that kind of mentality to continue after the pandemic. It's like, oh, we can play these board games digitally, so let's just not meet up anyway. It's like, oh, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of a bigger plus for me that, yeah, even the physical version still works over simple communication of video chat and
Mm-hmm.
Zoom.
We differ on this in terms of video, because I play lots of Tabletop Simulator. So that is my opinion. But that's not about Similo, so we're not talking about that.
I have played Tabletop Simulator though, guys.
I know he has. I'm just joking.
So
no,
but
but
yeah,
I would say other things. As I said, it's a really good party game. It is, when Ben was explaining the rules, it seems pretty simple. But when you start having to work with your team in terms of trying to figure it out, this is different than some of those other games. It feels like it's almost a combination of the Codename style of, you're getting a clue from, or Taboo, or like those kinds of games where you get a clue from your teammate who's providing it to you. But in this game, because it's fully cooperative, it isn't like those other party games where typically you're playing against another team, right? So those are still competitive, or if you watched our co-op video, it is a team versus team style game. Take that as you will. But this is, everyone is working together to figure it out or solve whatever the person is trying to give. So in that way, it's almost this combination of, as I was saying, Codename style of trying to figure out this clue, mixed with some other board games like Mysterium and Obscurio, where there is a clue giver in those games as well, but with a silent person who's giving maybe visual clues like this, but in a much more simplified version. So it's a much faster game, more like the Codenames family style game versus those ones.
Yeah, actually,
as you can see, like as we were talking about, the artwork is really, really good.
Well, yeah, sorry. On that point you just mentioned, I did want to say my pro also of in being like, I mean, the comparison I had given to you guys was Codenames mostly, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I know we haven't reviewed on this channel. Codenames was a super successful team versus team party word game from a few years ago. But basically, if you know how that plays, it really does kind of play like just one side of Codenames, where
Mm-hmm.
instead of one team taking their turn, then the other team. You're basically just that one team playing that co-op version of the game. And in doing that, I think it is kind of a little clever design because it takes out the waiting basically that those games can face. Like games like Taboo really don't have much waiting because a big part of that is like the timer, right? But then Codenames has a timer, but that, and even in the rules, it's saying it's not like a necessary part of the game. It's if you want to enforce time at some point, then yes, push the other team along by flipping the sand timer.
Very arbitrary.
But then one way around that then is, yeah, just making the game fully co-op so that you're not swapping turns and waiting for the other turn to take their guess and give their clue. It's just you're all on the same team the whole time. So I think that is a smart way to kind of get around that issue that people can face. And then, sorry, and then you mentioned the art.
Yeah, no, so I was going to say in terms of the art, it's, as we were kind of saying, it's very unique. It has a very distinctive art style, and it's a good art style. It's kind of cartoony in a way, like kind of like this definitely fantastical or not like accurate per se, not realistic, let's say.
Yeah, let me show some of it.
It definitely takes more of like the characteristics, but the fact that all of the look of the characters is very clear, kind of where they come from. If you know those stories, you know the lore of those, and you know you can tell that those are the characters. Obviously, they have the names in the corners of here, but and then Ben was actually telling us, and you can kind of see it on this picture here as well, is like it doesn't just tell you the name of the characters, it also has on the bottom right, right there, is what either book or person or where they're from and kind of the year of when that happened, or at least with the ones we were playing. It kind of tells you a little bit of the background behind those characters. So in the Fables one, I think it tells all the different stories, the fairy tale stories that they come from, which either the author or the person attributed to creating the stories in some way, and then the year that I think that publications came out. The myths one that we were talking about as well, it gives an indication of the Greek myths that they're a part of, like what they're most famous from, the author of whoever wrote that story and of that time period, and the date that they were put. So it also gives you a little bit of a background of these kinds of characters, which is also really cool.
Yeah, and just to show off some of the imagery here, the artwork. Yeah, I love the artwork a lot, as I've mentioned. And I mean, ignore the fact that the pictures I took are, I think, Spanish versions of the game. So the names are all in Spanish. But just the artwork, right? That's mainly what you're going off of to compare and deduce the secret character anyway. And so it's cool that there's like these small details that are different, but then all of them are very crisp, like the artwork itself, and vibrant. But then, yeah, all the kind of different details like nose shape, eye shape, mouth, facial hair, actual on your head hair, you know, the color of those, direction they're looking, the background of the behind the characters, their posture, their hats. It's all about the hats, people. And so this is just like the fables, a few of the fables. And then here are pictures for the myth characters. You can see like Zeus, Medusa, Pandora,
Harpy,
Jason,
Argos, probably Athena there, I'd be guessing.
And then you have historical figures, probably Shakespeare, Julio Caesar, Julius Caesar, Moctezuma, and then the one that isn't out yet but will come out later, the animals. This one's kind of blurry, but you can see the animals.
Oh, you might not be able to see my video, but the one I was sharing earlier.
So yeah, so that's kind of a look at the artwork, which I think is just great. And then aside from that, I think the only other pro I would think of is one is the time. Like it can be a really quick game, or it can be longer depending on how much people want to discuss. But it is pretty straightforward, right? The rules I gave were all the rules to setting up to just each of the 5 rounds to get to the end secret character or not. And so time, it can be pretty quick. I think even the box says 10 minutes. Okay, so we played longer than 10 minutes, but
Definitely longer than 10 minutes.
but definitely it can be played in 10 minutes. And then the second thing I was going to mention is in the rules I mentioned the way to combine the sets. I think that's a cool way to just kind of, give a reason to get multiple sets. You can get the ones that you like more, like the art style or the theme. And so that's why I have Fables and Myths so far, because those are the two I was most interested in. And there's a reason to. It's not just getting the exact same game that I can only play one of, but sure, I can combine it and make it kind of interesting to compare. Like, I want them to guess the genie as a secret character, and I'm going to play Zeus. Similo. It's like, can they see the similarity I'm thinking of between these two different genre characters?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a small.
And I would say actually that ability to combine it is also pretty clever, and it's actually a cool way to give it a different way of trying to play the game. Because if you're playing Similo, where if you're using just the same deck of cards, like it's all just one deck, it's fun, it's nice, it's pretty easy in a sense, in a way, because that thematically all the cards are the same. So relatively speaking, there are a lot more similarities to it, just because by the nature of being the same theme, there's a major similarity across all of the cards. So when you play the game using a completely different theme to try to guess the characters, or try to guess what the character is on the tableau of a completely different theme, it kind of pushes you to look for different kinds of similarities or differences, depending on how the clues are given. That adds a little bit more spice to the game. So I definitely recommend, if you are going to pick up this game, to try to pick up at least 2 different sets to try out that experience. Because I actually think that it's a very different game when you're trying to guess with a totally different set of cards. So we did it, I think, one time, and it definitely felt a lot different playing it that way versus playing it when we were just guessing all in one deck.
And that was an interesting experience too, because I think the one time we did try it that day, that specific game we played was easier. Was it?
Yeah, but that's also because we got stuck on a particular thematic aspect and element of the cards. Hats, which
so it is that
through.
Interesting part that you're mentioning of like using 2 different sets could make it easier, because people might recognize or pinpoint certain details more easily, or they might think these 2 characters actually share a lot of things in common, even though they're from different worlds. So
yeah, so there is a possibility, but I think it does spice it up. I would be curious to play it with the histories deck, because those are all like realistic, or like real people.
No, I was just thinking, I think it might be funny to be like using the history characters as the grid of 12, but then using animals as the clue cards.
Yeah. That'll be, I think the animals one would be really fun.
Yeah.
To just have that as the either the tableau or the ones that you're using to give clues, and then you see all the other characters, because all these are humans, right? Generally speaking, humanoid in some way. And then these are clearly not. So
and I think, along with these last 2 smaller pros I had mentioned, like the timing and the combining, 2 other small ones, last things are the size. Like, this is small, and it's actually just the deck of cards. So if you really want, you could make it even smaller by just carrying the deck of cards around in like a bag.
And Ben has small hands. Just kidding.
And the price. I think retail is $10. That's really cheap, and on Amazon you can get it for like $7 to $9. So like really cheap, especially. I don't know if we mentioned a lot, but it's something we do. John and I have talked about a lot over the years, of when trying to tell people about board games or get them into it. Like, $10 is like really hard to come by. In the board game world. Like, even a lot of the more complex, small, just card games are like at least $15, $17, maybe 20. So $10 is something that's hard to come by of such quality. Obviously you could get like poker cards for like $7 or something, $7, but an actual design game, great artwork, solid play for $10, that's a great deal. So now the cons. Things we didn't like as much about the game or don't think work as well.
Yeah, so I would say kind of my first main criticisms for the game, I think it's kind of standard with the co-op industry or the co-op kind of gameplay is this game can be pretty alpha gamer heavy, where somebody really dominates the conversation. It sometimes can be really hard for others to give their opinions. So just by nature also of this style of game, because you're choosing something to eliminate, alpha gamers will tend to have more of a voice and make their voice known. So others will probably, it'll be like, there'll be a lot of pressure to follow them. So, but I think that's just standard. I don't think it's something specific to this game. It's just, it will fall into that same pitfall. I think the other thing though, is that this game is very team discussion dependent. So it definitely falls into the, as I was saying, kind of the party game genre, where if people end up not being invested or interested in the game, they really have no reason to be playing, and they will drop off. They can drop off very quickly from being interested or wanting to be a part of the game. If maybe they don't like the theme, or maybe they don't like the art style specifically, and that might be hard for, like that could be a deterrent for people to like sit and play the game. So it has that dependency of a few other games like this, where it sometimes depends on the people you play with to make the game fun or interesting, versus if they're just not interested in games in general, which, then it's the question of like, well, then why are you playing board games with this person? But just to say, like, it's that, and in that, it's maybe you play a couple of rounds and it's pretty fresh those first couple of rounds. But if you play repeated rounds, especially if you only have one set and you play repeated rounds of the same set over and over, it may lose some of that luster or lose some of that replayability within the game night session. So
yeah, relating to that is maybe one of my main issues that come to mind, which is that and this happened when we were playing. We played like 4 times, I believe. And it was the idea that even though the deck has 30 character cards in it, which is quite a bit if you think about how much unique art is, and how you're, laying out just 12 each game and playing a total of 5 clue cards, right? Playing half of the cards a game, like it still felt like pretty quickly you saw the same characters over and over again, with one set, And I think it's not that big of an issue, but I think that does kind of lend itself to what you're mentioning of like the game kind of maybe feeling tedious in a way, because you expect like 30 cards, you'll see like, fresh artwork each time, but you end up seeing the same characters a lot, which is a little bit surprising. So,
although I was going to say, when you just shared some of those cards, there was a couple of cards. I think Cheshire Cat, I never saw. I don't think we ever saw Cheshire Cat. And then you showed Jack as well. Jack from Jack and the Giant Beanstalk. And we never saw him. We saw the giant, the nemesis of Jack, but we never saw him. We never saw those 2 cards show up when we played. And we played, I think, with that deck a total of 3 times in some way. So, yeah. So it just happened that we didn't see it. So I'm just blaming Ben's shuffling.
I do too, But I was a clue giver too. So actually, Cheshire Cat I had in my hand, so I saw. Maybe I saw Jack. I guess the clue giver technically sees more of the cards, right? But so that can kind of make the game feel tedious. So maybe only playing like a couple times, but with that tedium, then it kind of shortens the replayability of the game, I would say, or at least interest in playing it again. And then the second issue I'd have, which is not as big, but still one to note, is the way you give clues, or the way you're thinking of the clue, or the relationship between a character and the secret character. I think after you play it a few times, it is interesting in the beginning of like trying to figure out, okay, are they going to understand what I'm thinking, or do I need to think the way they're thinking, right? But then after a few times, eventually you still might come to an idea of, this is the, like, how do I say, most helpful clue to start with, like guy or girl. And that might, be the first thing that we all learn to give as our first clue, and just assume that that's what the person means. And so in that way, I think once you reach that point, which can easily happen after a few games, then it kind of loses how clever you can be about your clues. Because then it comes down to just an order of the clues that you're giving, you know. And so I think that also hurts kind of replayability once you kind of settle into just a single pattern of giving your clues.
Yeah, and you know, it's an interesting study because there's a game that we've reviewed, The Mind, where ironically in The Mind, that is exactly what you are trying to do, which is to get in sync with other players in a cooperative sense to be able to always win. So that could be a different challenge that maybe if you added into Similo, so like to kind of temper that con a little bit of like, it might make you more creative in how you want to approach this game, where it's not just a matter of finding it, but maybe trying to start getting streaks of like, how many games can we win in a row if we feel like we've really gotten in sync with each other? Like, can we do it and get 10 in a row, right? Always right every single time, or you know, something like that. So add a little spice or challenge, or even you start creating certain house rules of gender is not allowed to be used as a clue anymore or something. If that tends to be the one that everyone always uses, or you know, you just make it up with the group as you're playing along. Like that could be a fun way to add in a little variety. Obviously, I don't know how that balance changes the game, right? But that's, you know, that's part of the game. It's for fun. It's not supposed to be a heavy, intensive game that has like 50 bajillion strategies to win this game at, right? This is supposed to be one of these more fun, light games that you do play at your party groups.
Yeah, and that's actually why that one was more of a mid-level con for me, because I think along with what you're saying, yeah, another way that you can mix it up is basically how clever you want to be with your clue, right? Like your clue could be hinting at multiple things versus just, you know, everyone's assuming that it's just the gender clue, but it could be more than that, and that could be more helpful, because obviously if you keep playing one card just to eliminate one characteristic, you're still not going to eliminate all the characteristics to get down to specifically the secret character, right? So eventually you'll have to have clues that are hinting at multiple things, like this is an evil character who then also is looking this way or wearing a hat, you know, and so then that kind of still keeps it interesting. So yeah, you're right about the ways to mix it up.
Yeah. Any other cons?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty solid game. Otherwise, like it does what it sets out to do. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty clear. Again, to me, the biggest thing is the typical issues of typical co-op game. So it's not a specific Similo. It's just more of a, or the typical things that happen with co-op / party games, right? Between those two genres together is alpha gamers tend to push dominance in these styles of game, or, you know, how much replayability do you really have unless you add in certain house rules to kind of keep things fresh over time. So
okay, going on to our ratings, and John guesses the weight.
Cool.
He wants a copy of the game, guys.
I'm gonna so from the few games that we've played, I think the rating that I would give this game thus far is probably a 7.5. Actually,
wow. Okay,
I actually do give it a pretty high rating for the party family board game like co-op genre. I think it's a very well made game. I think the fact that there are the 2B4 different, you know, types of game themes, and I'm assuming, or I'd guess that if they're successful, they may come up with more, because there's many other potential, you know, things they could create if it is a successful launch across all of these. Yeah, as I was saying, there's not a lot of cons in the sense of like cooperative and party game wise. I think it's a very fresh way of bringing those genres together, those styles of playing the game together. I would want to replay this with different groups of people. And as I was talking about the different challenge ways of playing this game, it kind of made me a little bit excited about what other challenges could we think about to like really push this game to its limits for like having fun with it as an ongoing kind of game to play with people. So
okay, and the weight, how complex do you think it is?
1.12.
1.12. Okay, and actually, just to clarify, because John and I were talking about this before we started this video, about how I didn't have a score for it yet because we just played it together for the first time. But I came to my score before you said your score now.
Lies, okay? lies.
So let's go over to Board Game Geek and check out the weights. Let me share that screen. The weight, 1.08. Oh,
dang it!
So close.
I should have gone with my first instinct.
So close.
Uh,
Oh man.
dang it.
Yeah, that was really good though. And yeah, you gave it a 7.5. So average score here is 7. The score I give it is actually a 6.5. So we average out to the 7, like on Board Game Geek.
There you go.
And I thought 6.5 because I had to look up my previous scores for the other reviews we've done at least. And I think, a 7.5 for me was like coup. Like the top of the light or filler games, would be a 7.5. And so I don't think it's a top filler light game for me. And actually, originally I was thinking, I had told John, like, I have a 0.5 range of the rating I wanted to give it, and it was actually 6 or 6.5.
Interesting.
And so I think what bumped it up to a 6.5 is just actually seeing the art and the colors again. And like, it's just so well done. Like, especially if it's a theme I like, which I do like the fairy tale theme, the Fables deck. And to see the characters done with such detail is really cool. But after our review too, though, I am thinking over time, it's possible this could go up to a 7 at most for me. And the reason for that is because thinking more about playing it with other people, right? I think our only experience so far being me as the clue giver, I think that's kind of what made it repetitive for me after that session. But to imagine, playing this with my relatives some point, or then switch around clue givers with whichever group I'm playing with later, it brings to mind how accessible the game could be. And I think that's definitely would be a big plus for the game. If I do get that experience with it, or even hear from you viewers about you getting this game and how easy it is to play with people you've played with, family, friends. So if that's the case, I can see it going up to 7, but for now it is 6.5, which is I think the same the rating I gave to like Strike, which is abstract but like surprisingly fun, where then this game is not as addictive, I would say, as Strike, but then definitely has like the art work backing it. So that's why I give it a 6.5.
There you go.
So yeah,
just because Ben's never had to guess out of the clues.
Yeah,
the weird clues that were given to us.
That could be Ben. That really could be it. The being on the other side and feeling that excitement of like, what kind of
clue did you give us? Why would you give us that clue?
Where the clue giver is, the one who does know, knows the answer and knows exactly what they're trying to tell the other teammates. So yeah, that could be the hindrance on my part.
Very different experience, Ben. Very different experience.
So 6.5 from me, a 7.5 from John, and that is our review of Similo. Let me close this.
Turn off share.
Yeah, Similo. If you guys found this interesting, are curious about the game, like I said, really cheap, easy to get, order on Amazon, $10 at most. And if you found this review helpful in teaching you the game, sharing with you our thoughts on how it plays, please share this video with your friends, family, people you play board games with. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.